Bell, Board of Education members, county office personnel, Ms. Clark, DAR rep and former superintendent, Mr. Howard, fellow administrators, students, and most of all, Hart County veterans. Welcome to this year's Veterans Day ceremony. Mr. Jones and the Vocational Department have put together a fitting tribute to the men and women who sacrificed so much to keep America free and safe. We look forward to the remarks of Mr. Chris Calloway, our distinguished guest speaker. We once again welcome Mr. Howard from Post 109 of the American Legion, who will introduce our guest speaker. Mr. Talbert, the Symphonic Band, looks and sounds great today. I know you'll all enjoy the musical selections that they will bring during the program. A special tribute this year is the patriotic medley brought to us by the Hobson family. I can't wait to hear young Kate sing God Bless America. Coach Gaines and his technology class have produced another moving video that brings the meaning of Veterans Day into clear perspective. As always, our superintendent will close the ceremony by reading the names of Hart County veterans who paid the price in service to their country. And Ms. Clark from the John Benson Chapter National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution will present a wreath in their honor. And now, Cadet Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Nikki Dixon, leader of our Bulldog Battalion, which planned today's ceremony, will remind us of the true purpose of Veterans Day. Cadet Dixon.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, students, staff, and faculty of Hart County High School, and all of our honored guests. I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Nikki Dixon, Commander of the Junior ROTC Bulldog Battalion. Most of you know the history behind Veterans Day. In 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fell silent in Europe and church bells rang around the world as the armistice ending World War I. The war to end all wars was signed. Armistice Day officially became a holiday in the United States in 1926 and was designated a national holiday 12 years later. On June 1st, 1954, the name was changed to Veterans Day to honor all United States veterans. Some of our guests today actually made history themselves. Veterans of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and many other conflicts are with us as honored guests. Your presence and your sacrifice are silent tribute to all who have served. You remind us that though we wish the armistice of 1918 had ended war for all time, the sad truth is that our freedom and liberty require constant vigilance. Right now, young Americans, some from Hart County, stand watch around the world so that these freedoms may endure. Will you please join me in a round of applause for the veterans in attendance today? And now, please rise for the presentation of colors, pledge to our flag, and national anthem.
Stand up.
Rise, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. leader of the Hart County High School Symphonic Band.
Next, as the band performs Armed Forces Salute, we would like to ask all of the veterans in attendance, when your service song is played, please rise and be recognized.
Left, base.
Please welcome the Hobson family to today's program. They will present a melody of patriotic songs in honor of our veterans.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hoorah, hoorah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hoorah, hoorah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all feel glad when Johnny comes marching home. When Johnny comes marching home again, hoorah, hoorah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hoorah, hoorah. The men will cheer and the boys will shout, the ladies they will all turn out, and we'll all feel glad when Johnny comes marching home.
I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy, a Yankee Doodle
Beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above.
From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, what would bow? God bless America, my home sweet home. God bless America, my home sweet home.
All right, everybody, one more round. God bless America together. We're all Americans.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the ocean.
indeed blessed this great country, and the Hobson family has blessed us just now. Thanks very, very much. God bless you, and if Miss Brown McCall's in the audience, in 6 years she'll be a freshman.
Mr. and Mrs. Hobson and Kate, thank y'all for that great performance. It was wonderful. And now please direct your attention to the screen being lowered on stage. A video produced by Coach Gaines Technology class will be now shown.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Duty, honor, country. Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be. They are your rallying points to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith when there seems to be little cause for faith, to create hope when hope becomes forlorn.
Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger.
There will be a day before long when this generation of servicemen and women step out of uniform. They will build families and lives of their own. God willing, they will grow old. And someday their children and their children's children will gather here to honor them.
Charles Howard, Commander of Post 109 of the American Legion, will introduce today's guest speaker.
Let me just add, last year we had some young folks to help us old folks up and down the steps. We might want to add that back next year. Thank you so much, faculty and staff of Hart County High School, mostly the students. You guys, I've told you before that you are our future. Stay in school. Be a part of it. Thank you. Christopher L. Calloway. That's what they got in Chris, right? Just read that. Chris Calloway is a native of Columbia, South Carolina. He grew up in South Carolina, lived in Arkansas, and in Georgia. While a student at North Georgia College in Dahlonega, Georgia, he enlisted in the Air Force. And that makes him eligible to be in the American Legion, by the way. He did his basic training in Lackland Air Force Base in Texas in the summer of 1986. He put his college career on hold for a short time, and he served in active duty in the United States Air Force as a transportation specialist. He was stationed in Pope Air Force Base in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He moved back and forth across from Europe, from Frankfurt, Germany. While on active duty, he rose to the rank of sergeant. In September of 1991, Sergeant Galloway was honorably discharged from the Air Force and completed his college education at Georgia State University with a BA degree in history. He holds a master's degree in social science education from Piedmont College and an educational specialist degree for educational leadership and supervision from Lincoln Memorial University. Since 1994, he has been an employee of Hart County High School. He teaches history and economics. The Calloway family lives in Hartwell, where they are members of the Hartwell United Methodist Church. Sergeant Galloway's wife, Terry, is the director of the First Baptist Church Preschool. His son, Derek, is a music education student at Gainesville State College. His son, Devin, was a valedictorian of Hart County High School in 2009. Is a biomedical engineer student at the University of Georgia. His daughter, Lauren, is in the 9th grade. She's a student at Hart County High School. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome one of your own, Chris Calloway.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Good morning. Before I begin, I would like to especially recognize the Junior ROTC Bulldog Battalion. Colonel Myers, y'all have put on another outstanding Veterans Day program. And even though you're sitting behind the curtain, you can hear me but can't see me. An outstanding job to Mr. Talbert and the Hart County High School Bulldog Symphonic Band. Thank you very much. Superintendent Bell, Hart County Board of Education members, distinguished members of our community and guests of the community, Mr. Gibbs, fellow faculty and staff members, students, but most importantly, veterans of the United States Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. When Colonel Myers asked me to speak to the Veterans Day program, two emotions came over me: deep honor and deep embarrassment. It's an honor to stand before you here. This is my 16th year at Hart County High School, and we have had generals, we've had officers, we've had enlisted men and women, veterans who saw action in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and Hart Countyans who are serving our country today in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm honored to follow them. It's also embarrassing because even though I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force, I never saw action in combat. I went in, I did my time, I served my country, and I got out. I mentioned that to Colonel Myers when he asked me to speak, and he replied that he often felt the same way since he never served in a forward theater like Master Sergeant Fagan had. He also said that since we had signed up to serve, though, if we had been ordered to go, we would have gone, and we would have gone willingly. In the 234-year history of our nation, we have been involved in 12 wars, including the Cold War and the Native American Wars in the 1800s. 6 of these wars were declared by congressional action, as prescribed in our Constitution. These wars account for roughly 60 years of our history. That leaves us 174 years in the history of this country where we have not been engaged in actual combat. Many Americans served in the military during those years, during times of peace, training to fight if we had to go. From the Minutemen at Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill, to the militia units that fought the Revolution, of the early American era, to the active duty reserve and National Guardsmen that serve our military today. Our military has been a predominantly volunteer force for the majority of our country's history. This fact is, I think, is one of the most important reasons why we Americans enjoy the freedoms we have today. The American military in 1776 was unique in the concept that it was a volunteer force. And for the most of our history, it has been a volunteer force. Just like America is unique in its founding. Teaching U.S. history, one of the honors I get to teach and one of my favorite topics to teach is the Declaration of Independence. Because the Declaration of Independence is the most important document, in my opinion, in our country's history. Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence, in the section of the Declaration of the Natural Rights, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Most countries in the world were founded based off of culture, cultural groups, language. Our country was founded based off of ideals: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, equality among men, men meaning people, all of us. What makes up our military? Our military is made up of people from all walks of life. We're rich, poor, white, black, Latino, Asian, Middle Eastern. We're all serving our nation. Our military is made up of people like Scott Fagan, G.T. Myers, Darrell Clark, Kevin Heaton, Mike Carey, Mike Bowers, Alan Talbert, and myself. All of us have different backgrounds, different experiences, different talents, and different levels of education. While there are many differences, we all have one thing in common. We all served in the military, and we're all Americans. Every year around Veterans Day, since I've been a teacher here at Hart County High School, I've been asked by a student normally during the Armed Forces Medley, what song was that was playing when you stood up? I tell them it was the Air Force song. And they, because I was in the Air Force, they normally ask me, did you fly? I'll tell them, sure, I flew. I flew on a C-130. I flew on a C-141. I flew on a C-5. I even flew on a 747. And they asked me, wow, you went through all that pilot training? No. I sat in a passenger seat just like everybody else did. Normally, when kids ask that, the students will, somebody normally will always ask, well, Mr. Calloway, did you ever jump out of airplanes? Yeah, I jumped out of airplanes. I jumped out of a C-5. I jumped out of a C-141. I jumped out of a C-130. Did you wear a parachute? No. That's because the C-130, the flight deck's about that far off the ground. Now, unfortunately, a C-5 deck is 12 feet off the ground. The time I jumped off of a C-5 onto a concrete concrete flight line, about halfway down, I realized the stupidity of that. When my head reached halfway, that's about the time my feet hit the ground, and it hurt like crazy. My job at that time was a 60551. The Air Force has changed that code. I'm not sure what it is now, but I was an air transportation specialist. We processed cargo and passenger flights in and out of the bases where I was stationed. We were basically an airport, and we could go anywhere. The closest I ever got to actual combat was in May 1989, when I was deployed to Panama as a member of the 3rd Mobile Aerial Port Squadron at Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina, in support of an operation called Operation Nimrod Dancer. I had forgotten the name of that operation. Those of you that are my age and a little bit older probably remember when General Noriega sent out his thugs to beat up an opposition candidate after the Panamanian elections in 1989. President Bush sent us to Panama to respond to that issue. As I was at 3rd Mobile Airport at Pope, we assigned the 82nd Airborne went, and 3rd MAPS went with them. I recall the nervousness I had walking off the back of that huge C-5 at Howard Air Force Base, Panama, feeling the tropical heat, looking out across the mountains and seeing the clouds about halfway down, and the Master Sergeant in front of me saying, "Wow, this is just like Vietnam." I got that scared. Fortunately, I didn't have to face enemy fire, but the next 3 weeks I worked 12-hour days and some of the roughest work I've ever had to do in my life. Even rougher than teaching teenagers American history and economics. While I was in Panama, I saw poverty that was worse than anything I've ever seen here in the United States or anywhere else in the world. When I returned to Pope from Panama, I had orders to Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany. A little bit of Rhein-Main trivia for you. Miss Bowers-Davis and I teach that Rhein-Main was one of the staging bases for the Berlin airlift. And it was also the base where the Hindenburg left on its fateful journey to New Jersey in 1937 when it exploded. At Rhein-Main, I tasted firsthand the seriousness of the times we lived in. 4 years before I was stationed at Rhein-Main, a car bomb exploded, damaging the dorm that I lived in on base, killing 5 people. We had chemical warfare training at least every 2 or 3 months, because at any time the Soviet Union or the Warsaw Pact, we knew they were coming through the Fulda Gap to take us over and try to spread their vision of the world. Rhein-Main was only 7 minutes by MiG from then East Germany. I also experienced some of the hatred that some people in the world have for Americans. I was fortunate enough, though, also to witness history being made. I was in Germany when the Berlin Wall fell. I was in Germany when the Iron Curtain lifted. I was able to be in Germany and have a front row seat for the reunification of a nation. During Operation Desert Shield and Storm, which occurred while I was at Rhein-Main, my unit, the 435th Aerial Port Squadron, handled over 1/2 of all the cargo that was flown from the United States to bases in Saudi Arabia. The reason for this was that Rhein-Main shared its runway with Frankfurt Airport, and the American military and the coalition could have flights arriving 24 hours a day. My job during that time was handling inbound cargo. We went from 8-hour work days prior to Desert Shield to 12-hour days for the remainder of my time there. I also became the training NCO for my section after getting my promotion to sergeant. I was in charge of training the active duty airmen and the Reserve National Guard units on procedures at our base and how to use the technology. In Germany, the value of finish the job, or as we like to say here in Hart County, finish what you start, was driven home to me. On 14 January 1991, we suffered a problem with our mainframe computer system and lost all of our data for the close to 300,000 pieces of cargo we had at Rhein-Main. At that time, 4 of us, my section chief, my supervisor, another airman, and myself, we worked 31 hours straight getting the data back. That was my first time really working with computers, understanding how they work, and then figuring out how to fix them. The timing could not have come any worse for the data crash, as on 16 January 1991 was when the ground war started in Iraq. And like I said, we were the main shipping base getting goods there. Although my time in Germany was great, and although I gained an awful lot, I also found that at Rhein-Main I decided I wanted to be a teacher. Being in Germany made me appreciate how great it is to live in this country. In this country where students Any one of you can decide to be pretty much anything you want to. I'm a firm believer. If you set your mind to it, you work hard, you can achieve success, whether it's financial success or success in your life. You work hard enough, you persevere, you finish what you start, you can do it. Preparing for today, I spoke to several veterans that I respect highly. My respect for them is due also in part that even though they're veterans, they continue to serve our country, and especially Hart County, as teachers here at Hart County High School. We all joined the military for various reasons, whether it was for Mr. Carey, Mr. Bowers, and Mr. Hartwell, or Mr. Talbot, a chance to get out of Hartwell, or for myself, a chance to get out of Duluth. Pay for college, I was interested in life, or not just be Mike, and Alan from Hartwell and Chris from Duluth, but be a part of something bigger. Be a part of something better. Be a part of something to say that I went the extra mile. I'm very proud of that fact. When I was in basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas in June 1986, my squadron commander asked us, "Why did you join the Air Force?" He asked this question of the different airmen in my training flight and got the stock answers: pay for college, see the world, learn a skill, meet girls. One guy said to play golf. But one airman also said, so I can become a man. And Captain Ortega, our commander, said something that's really struck me. The military doesn't make a man out of you or a woman out of you. It merely brings out what's already there. I found that to be true, especially with myself. Coming into the military as somebody who didn't really know what they wanted to do, but coming out someone who did. I also see it in several of my students, especially one student who was one of the biggest cut-ups I ever had in class at this school. This young man was just silly. And I can remember very much him going, "Oh, Mr. Calloway, I thought we were friends. Come on, Mr. Calloway." He's a good kid. I knew he was a good kid then. And apparently I must have done something wrong, because I have his little brother in my homeroom. When I see and talk about Courtney Kraft now, the silly kid that sat in my classroom and drove me crazy is now, after a stint in the United States Marine Corps with the Secret Service in Washington, D.C., and is a fine young man. When I talk to him now, the humor and the entertaining personality are still there. But something else has happened to him. Something else, he understands that there's a little more than just himself. Most veterans I know joined for various reasons, but each one of us got out of serving more than we realized at the time. We share a sense of being a part of something bigger. We risked a little more than most others. At athletic events or public gatherings, we get annoyed when the Star-Spangled Banner is playing and people don't remove their ball caps, or they walk around talking and ignore it. Mr. Carey told me this line as I was talking to him, and I'm going to borrow it, with your permission, sir, every time I'm ever asked this question. Do you want Derek, Devin, and Lauren to join the military? No. I don't want them to join the military because I joined so they don't have to. I pray and I hope that we never have a situation where my children or anybody's children have to go to war. I also want my children to be able to say, my daddy served in the military. During the class in basic, the commander asked the guy sitting next to me, did you join the Air Force to die for your country? That moment really struck me like a lightning bolt. And I've carried it with me ever since. No one joins the military to die for their country. But you'd be willing to do it if you had to, because it's part of your job. In 16 years, one moment around Veterans Day always makes my hair stand up on end. It's happening right now as I'm thinking about it. In just a moment, Superintendent Bell will read the names of the Hart Countyans who answered the call of duty, went to the military, fought in a war, and paid the ultimate sacrifice, their lives. These men were friends of many older people here and relatives of many of you students. Some of these names that you might recognize, like Vickery, Gaines, Aleline, Skelton, Anchorage. Some of these people were your age and just a little bit older when their life was tragically cut short. Whether they were drafted or volunteered, they served and the same price was extracted from them, their life. We honor them here at school on Veterans Day, and we will remember them even though we won't be here at school on Memorial Day. We will remember them on Memorial Day. On Facebook, one of my friends with whom I served at Ryan 9 Air Base, Staff Sergeant Brian Buckridge, posted this, and I copied it as my status. I am a veteran. A veteran is someone who at one point in their life wrote a blank check payable to the United States of America for an amount up to and including their life. Regardless of your political views, that's an honor. There are way too many people in this country who no longer remember that fact. I would like to say that this speech has been a journey for me. It's been tough for me to write it. But I do want to go back and change one thing. I'm not embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed that I did not go into combat. I'm proud that I served my country for 5.5 years as a reservist in an active duty United States Air Force Airman. And I am very proud to be a teacher here at Hart County High School, almost as proud as I am of being father to Derek, Devin, and Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your remarks and service to our country. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the Superintendent of Schools for Hart County, Mr. Jerry Bell, who will read the names of Hart County's honored dead.
Spanish-American War, George Reisner. Mexican Punitive Expedition, DeWitt Rucker. World War I, John W. Adams. Owen J. Alford. Erskine Allen. George W. Kaysen. Preston B. Carter. Samuel J. Chapelier. William J. Connolly. Charles P. Dodd. James B. Estes. Henry Gaines. Anderson Harris. John R. Heaton. Oscar B. McCurley. Lawrence Nix. George W. Patterson. Claude Stevenson. Gilbert Thompson. Yancey J. Wilson. World War II. Clifford A. Halewine. Harris D. Bray. Willie Lee Cape. Jordan B. Chastain. Clifford D. Drake. Jack C. Fleming. Lucius Franklin. Benny Lindsay Gaines. Lloyd R. Gaines. Brian N. M. Grigsby. Francis E. Haley. John Parks Harper. W. A. Hayes. Joel L. Herndon. J. T. House. Robert Johnson. Walker H. K. Fred M. Martin. Rankin Q. McGee. Clarence A. Murray. John G. Nels. Joe Franklin Obar. Winston Obar. James W. Purcell. Clarence W. Rice, Jr. Robert B. Richardson, Charles S. Roberts, Jr., John E. Rucker, Frank Lee Sanders, Enoch A. Scales, Knox L. Scales, Frank Lee Seymour, Ralph Sherrard, Travis G. Smith, Holton D. Stovall, Thomas G. Welburn, William Marion Wilcox, Jack C. Wilson, Fletcher, Korean War, Fletcher Gaines, Clarence Heaton Jr., McDoyle McLean, Carl Wesley Rowland, Amos Cleveland Pete Temple, Vietnam War, Louis John Cleaver, Ralph Deward Cordell, Thaddeus Durrett, Bobby James, Galen Minor Smith, Sammy Howard Whitworth.
We are joined now by Miss Nancy Clark, Regent of the John Benson Chapter National Society of the Daughters of American Revolution, for a special presentation. Following that, please remain standing for the praying of taps by the band and a moment of silence.
Honored guests and veterans, students and faculty, thank you for your presence and respect during today's ceremony. This concludes the program. Students should return quietly to their homeroom.